Hey, what's happening? Before we jump into the show, I wanted to see if you had any music on a hard drive. You have a band, you have a project, and you want to self-release your own music. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and go get your music up on all the streamers. You keep 100% of your royalties, and you can get 30% off by using this code. It's a great, easy way to get your music up on the streamers and share it with your fans, your friends, your family, your mom, your dog, everybody. Everyone wants to hear it. But go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, HYPHENATE, and send me the link. I want to hear it too. Send your mom the link. Send your dog the link. They all want to hear it too. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Isotope, the absolute leaders in intuitively designed plugins for audio restoration, mixing, and mastering. At isotope.com, you'll find a plethora of tools and suites that will enhance your audio production, whether it's voice, video, podcast, or a full production recording session. Check out the industry-standard audio repair tool, RX11, or the multi-tool mixer plugin, Neutron 5, or the powerful Ozone 11 mastering suite, plus tons more. Go to isotope.com and use the code FRET10 at checkout for 10% off. That's FRET10 to get 10% off at checkout. And again, the website is isotope.com, IZOTOPE.com.
My observation, being a mid-40s person thinking about the music industry now, is I think you just have to diversify so much more than you used to. You can't just be a band and make music and say like, okay, I hope this makes money. Like, you also have to be on TikTok. You also have to be, you just have to be relentless about all the different outlets. And the people that I see that I work with who are doing well in this environment seem to have the energy or have the understanding of how to be present on all of those different outlets in a way that, to me, is just like way too much,
What's happening, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. On today's show, we have Tim Iseler from Iseler Financial. You heard him there on the top. Musicians got to be musicianing and creating and TikToking and doing everything else to the full nines. Tim is a friend of a friend, and he reached out to me just a little while ago to talk about music in the creative world. And I said, I don't know anything about music in the creative world. And he said, well, I know a little bit. I know a little bit more than you do. So let's talk about it. So that's our conversation today is about, growing up a punk, a musician, a creative, an engineer, recording engineer, somebody with a mind towards creativity and producing music, and then transitioning into, the financial area and helping people who are more creatively minded manage their money and invest their money and, sort of just keep track of their money and know what they're doing with it and how to save it and not, spend it where it doesn't need to be saved, or spend it where it doesn't need to be spent and save it where it needs to be saved. All those little intricate things, which I don't think I had much of an idea about. I had a few ideas, but gosh, it's funny how that works in our world, right? I mean, I feel like that's the kind of stuff, it's like the birds and the bees talk you have with your parents. They should also sit down and say, okay, here is a credit card. This is how credit cards work. Here is taxes. Here's how taxes work. Here's how to read your paycheck. I think this is all stuff, if you're of my age range, north of 40, we've figured it out at some point to the degree that we're not in jail or haven't committed tax fraud or haven't committed any kind of financial crimes. But that's about it. I could say, well, hey, I'm not doing anything illegal, so that's good. But in terms of having like a handle on it to the point of like, well, I can make this work for me, or I have a way of like knowing what to do with money when I get it, so doesn't just go poof and out of my hands, especially, with this kind of inflation and this weird particular time and economy we live in. It gets harder and harder to stretch out those dollars. I'm definitely finding myself into the hamburger helper sort of top ramen days of things. So I thought, yeah, it'd be fun to talk to Tim and sort of get his backstory, coming out of Chicago. I'll let him tell it. But yeah, if this is something that you're interested in, you should go to IselerFinancial.com. That's ISELER financial.com. Iseler, Iseler. And talk to Tim. He also has a great podcast. We're talking about money. And I love the name of his podcast. It's called The Things We Never Talk About, which again is money, right? And finances and investing and taxes and all the stuff, that we don't talk about. So I was a guest on his show. I don't know when my episode will go up, probably sometime here in the future if it hasn't already. But yeah, go check out his podcast and check out his services. If this is something, if you need help, if you want someone to talk about, tell me you heard it here on Hyphenate. But yeah, Tim's great. He's one of us. He's a punk. He's a creative. He's from the Midwest. He is a good guy. Seems to have a good head on his shoulders. You'll hear our conversation coming up shortly. But if you want to get in touch with me, hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com will get you right to my email box. And yeah, I'll hit you back. We also have a bunch of episodes here on the channel for the show. And you can go check out past episodes. And make sure you have automatic downloads turned on. Make sure you're subscribed. Tell your friends. It's the best way to really help support this show and everything we do. We're part of the Ruinous Media Network. They have tons of great, cool shows happening there every day this week, every day, every week, every month. But yeah, go check out ruinousmedia.com and yeah, let your friends know. Go exploring, go spelunking around the Ruinous Media, landscape. There's a lot of great shows here. I'm proud to be part of this cool family of podcasters and creatives. And yeah, in the show notes down below, you will find a link to IselerFinancial.com. If that's something you're into, if you want to know more about what to do with your money, if you're a creatively minded person who knows the difference, between SM57 and SM58, but you don't know the difference between a traditional 401k and a Roth IRA, this might be the guy you should talk to, or at least, tune into his podcast, The Thing We Never Talk About with Tim Iseler. And you can also go to IselerFinancial.com to check out all that he does. So thanks, Tim, for coming on. I appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to everybody for listening. I appreciate the time you spend with me every week here. It's a lot of fun making these episodes. And, sometimes it's like talking out in the void, but I do hear back from some of you occasionally, and it's great. I love hearing from you. You can find me on Instagram at Randy S. Randall. And yeah, let me know. Let me know what's going on. Let me know what's going on in your life. Send me music. Send me good recommendations. Send me fun things that you are excited about, especially going into these holiday seasons. What is getting you through the day? How do we do it? How do we make all this happen? I'm always curious to know what you, the listeners, are up to. So hit me up, hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com, or find me on Instagram at Randy S. Randall. And here is my guest, Tim Iseler. Again, IselerFinancial.com is his website, and his podcast is called The Thing We Never Talk About. Good stuff. This is a fun conversation. I've been looking forward to this. You are friends with past guest Bobby Berg.
And past guest Jeff Parker. I was just listening to that one this morning.
Oh, incredible. Yeah, that just came out. That's amazing. So it sounds like you're a Chicago guy. Give me the rundown. Where do you come from?
I was a Chicago guy for many years. I grew up in Michigan, and then I moved to Chicago after I was done with school. And very, very quickly after I moved to Chicago, I started working at Soma Electronic Music Studios, which was owned by John McIntyre, who plays in a band with Jeff.
Yeah.
And through playing in bands and through working there, I got very quickly, I don't want to say established, but I got very quickly immersed in the Chicago music scene.
That's a good way to do it. Yeah. I mean, Soma, to me, I think growing up as, a product of the 90s and fan of all things indie and slightly proggy electronic, Soma seemed like a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory kind of situation. I would see the credits on all of my favorite records and things that I just I don't know how any of this is made. This all sounds like it's been blended through a computer, yet any computer I have does not do these sounds. Talk a little bit about Soma and how you came to it. What did you go in as an intern, as an engineer, or what was your entry there, and what did you do there?
Yeah, so I grew up in Michigan, as I said, and when I was in school in Michigan, I met some people named Bill Skibby and Jessica Ruffins who were building a recording studio in Benton Harbor, Michigan, called Key Club. And I would, during my last year of school, I would once or twice a week just drive over there, which was not terribly far for me, and help them with the construction of their studio. And so when I was getting ready to finish up with school, I knew I wanted to move to Chicago. And Bill had helped build Soma, and he had also helped build Electrical Audio. He had worked there previously, and he knew that Soma was looking for someone. So he said, why don't you reach out to John, which I did. And I remember while we were my buddy and I were moving together, we were apartment hunting, and I just stopped by Soma and said hello. And John said, sure, you can intern here. So I started there, and within 2 weeks, he was like, what if you just work here? And so I did. And so previous to that, I had done a little bit of recording. I had started out recording myself and my own band, and then was kind of at the point where I knew how to run a session with someone else's band, and had made recordings. I'd made one EP that had been released, although I hadn't gotten paid for it. So, I don't know if you could call me a professional, but I knew how to do it when I got hired at Soma.
If it sold, if somebody paid for the record, whoever made that record is now a professional. That's the way I put it. You know what I mean? The audience makes you a professional. If anyone buys a product that you had a hand in helping, that's how I always think of it. With the record labels often, more often than not, even now, as time goes on, have no money. There's a production money, but ultimately the product may, but again, in the years of streaming, I don't know if it's hard. Like, well, I made a record that's streaming. Is that really professional? That's a bigger question, I suppose.
I think about that too, because I currently make electronic music under my own name, and I make electronic music with my buddy Jeremy Lemos, who is also an audio engineer. Yeah. And I used to make guitar music, and somebody was kind of teasing me where I use DistroKid to get my music on Spotify and Apple Music, and somebody was teasing me like, you're paying money to give your music away. And for me, I never made any money from any music I made ever. We'd press up 7-inches just because we wanted them and because it was fun to have a tangible thing. But I don't know if we ever recouped on anything in any of my bands.
Right. It always cost money to make music. So it's cheaper to pay for the digital distribution with the thought that more ears will get to that versus paying, $1,000 for 500 7-inches, and you give 50 away, you sell 4, and then you have, 436 sitting in your garage or in your closet for the next 40 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least this way, if it's on streaming, despite all the economics impact, at least, more than the 10 people will hear it. Yeah. It's a tough one. Okay. So Electric Audio. So you're running the board. What was the setup there? Now I'm just kind of geeking out as a gear nerd. Was it a big analog board, or was it all early computer stuff? What was the setup there?
Yeah. Soma was, at least in Chicago, I would say, ahead of the curve in technology. So it was a full analog studio. When I started, we had a Neotech console, and then that's the Chicago
bread and butter. They have the Neotechs.
That's the one, which is what they have at Electrical, and they had at other studios around. Mm-hmm. But sometime, I want to say during 2002, John made a deal to acquire a Trident A range, which is, there were I want to say there were only like 12 or 14 of those ever made. And they were extremely nice consoles. So myself and another guy flew out to LA, loaded it into a truck, and drove it back to Chicago. And then over the next year-ish, with the help of an extremely talented studio tech named Shay Ako, we refurbished it. I don't want to say we rebuilt it, but we completely refurbished it. And so for most of the years that I was at Soma, we had a Trident A range in there, which is just an amazing amazing console.
Yeah, if I can read between the lines, it sounds like this came out of like Crosby, Stills and Nash's like, home recording studio, and you had to take all the Coke flakes and joints and roaches that fell between the faders. If some rich guy in the 70s probably had this rig, right? Or I don't know, when does that come from? Trident A-Range. It's in that era.
The A-Range was the first one they did, so it would be 70s.
70s, yeah. So it sounds like it was a 70s, rich rock star, rich producer somewhere up in the hills. You probably had to get it back, wipe off all the Pall Malls and take Quaaludes, make sure you didn't get any LSD on your hands. Yeah.
McIntyre probably knew the history of it. I can't recall now where the lineage of where it came from, but so we had a full.
Oh, sorry, I'll interrupt for one more thing. Sorry,
analog.
There was one thing it just reminded me of. There was a great story, I think, of somebody who was taking apart or refurbishing gear that was either at UC Berkeley or had come from the dead or somewhere in that range in the Bay Area. And this was just recently in the 2020s. And as he was taking it apart to, he was going to replace some of the capacitors or something in there had dried out, and he was doing work on it, and he touched this thing. There was something in there. It was a piece of paper or something. He touched it and just to pull its stuff out. And it was like, 50-year-old acid. Blotter, like strong acid. And then he went on a trip for like 2 days, and he was just trying to pull apart this piece of recording equipment in the Bay Area. And like, okay, you have to wear gloves. No, it's occupational hazard.
Just from the contact with the paper.
It was something like, I forget what the details were, but it was something. Yeah, he goes on this, but it was like vintage acid. Like they don't even make that kind of acid anymore. It was there was a whole journey to it.
Yeah, it's just like the vintage gear.
Yeah, man. So you install the Trident A-Range. So that's a big step up for that studio. That kind of sets it apart for that. And it at least sets it apart from contemporaries like Electric, because they have the Neotech and they have Albini, but John's going to have now this cool piece of vintage gear.
Right. And when I started there, we had a Studer A80 tape machine, which if you've ever seen one of those, that's the really, really tall one.
I use the plug-in every day on my bus mix.
Yeah.
Those are great. Yeah.
Yeah. We had
Sweet Harmony glue.
We had 16 track heads and 24 track heads. So you could, depending on what you wanted to do, you could do that. And then later we sold that to Wilco and got an MCI JH16, which also had 16 track and 24 track heads. And that one, there was a thing called a microlinks, which you could use as kind of a go between the tape machine and the Pro Tools. And so if you wanted someone to if somebody wanted to record analog, but also have it sync to the Pro Tools, we could do that. And then we had racks of outboard gear, lots of nice vintage, or some vintage, some contemporary mic pre's and EQs and compressors and effects and stuff. But Soma also was very well known, I would say, for a complete side of the control room was all just modular synth stuff. And that was before everybody had modular synth stuff. Like Eurorack hadn't taken off like it has now. So I had never, ever in my life seen any of this stuff. So I was walking in, I didn't even know what a modular synthesizer was. And so it was completely like being in Willy Wonka's factory or something. Like I didn't know what this stuff was. I didn't even know.
This makes me so happy to know I wasn't far off from whatever my dreams were as a child in Southern California, imagining what this place would be. This sounds better than I could expect.
It's like walking into, in a way, maybe this is like too grand or something, but it's kind of like sitting down in like the Millennium Falcon and you're like, what do these switches do? What is all these knobs? I don't know what any of this does, but it looks amazing. And like a lot of studios, I assume, a lot of independent studios anyway, John was really generous when there was downtime, which was usually when he went on tour. When there was downtime, I could use the studio for free. And so some nights I would have my band in to record. Some nights I would have friends' bands in to record. But a lot of times I would just sit in there and like plug in cables in the modular synth world and just see what happened. How did it work?
Wow. Yeah.
And I am not a big instruction manual person. I very much prefer to learn by doing. And so I never really I learned how modular synths work by doing it. And so I was plugging things in the wrong way, or, and sometimes things would work and I'd be like, oh, that's neat. What if I turn the knob? And that was, and then we also had not a huge playing room at Soma. We had a live room that was not huge, but depending on how you move some curtains around, you could get that big Chicago drum sound if you wanted, and an ISO booth. But it was, the footprint of the studio was very small, but it had everything you would need to do a full analog or digital session.
That's cool. It's so funny you bring that up, the drum sound, because I was just listening to TNT, the Tortoise record TNT, when I was posting stuff about Jeff Parker's episode. And there are some crushing drum tracks. I don't really think of Johnny's drumming being like that, from the years of knowing him and playing with him. But whatever they did on that record it's Bonham times 10. They really, just that crispy snare and those big, distorted kick drums and stuff. Like, wow, I didn't think about it. Even at the time, it didn't even stand out to me that was that they were using that drum sound on that record, or at least on the first couple songs. But hearing it now, it's like, oh, okay. And that might have also just been a style at the time. You know what I mean? That was a cool thing to have in there, and it kind of fit in the milieu of whatever, of the late 90s, of having that cool drum sound was part of it. But now it stands out so much. Yeah.
My roommate at the time that record came out was really into Tortoise, and he was also into things like Square Pusher and Aphex Twin and stuff like that. And so I just kind of lumped Tortoise in with that category of like heavily manipulated, possibly like computer chopping and editing and stuff.
Looped. Yeah.
And then I saw them play when they came through Kalamazoo, Michigan. It was either like Memorial Day or 4th of July. It was a holiday, and so there was hardly anyone there, but I saw them play, and it blew my mind off, where it was like, that guy was playing keyboards and now he's playing drums, and the guy who was playing drums is now playing bass, and the other guy's now playing this thing that I didn't know what it was, but it was a marimba, and it just totally blew my mind. I'd never seen any band do anything like that, and it really changed my perspective on them as a band and the records, of just seeing the virtuosic character of so many of the members.
Yeah, it always struck me too. As it's sort of a band full of ringers, like session guys. You get one of those guys on a session, and you immediately the production just went up. A great percentage. But to have a whole band of that, you're just like, oh, okay, that's what they should be making. That's good. Versus incomprehensible space jazz. It's like, no, they there was definitely songs, arrangements, melody. There was it was a very like accessible thing, at least for the time. It sort of sat in there, and I think just in terms of how it met my ears as a suburban California kid, it was, like Stereolab and Tortoise. I was like, okay, this is kind of blowing my mind. And in a similar sort of time, they were doing different things, but I was aware there was some crossover and some version of that, whether it was just David Pajo or just something that was happening. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So you're interning at Soma, and then you're working there. And what were the bands you were recording? What was sort of some of the throughput there? I'm just curious what records you worked on.
The very first session I did, where I was hired I was hired by John to be the staff engineer. But the very first one I did on my own it's a record, duo record with David Grubbs and someone else. And I apologize that I don't remember the name of someone else, but I knew who Grubbs was, and I didn't know the other guy. And it's available, or it got released. It's called The Harmless Dust. And that was like the first thing where I didn't know the people, and they came in and I recorded them, and it was only a day or something like that. And very, very shortly, well, this is true. The second session that happened after I started at Soma.
I'll give you the name, Nikos Velotias.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
So the second
make sure everyone's credited.
Yeah. The second session that happened after I started there was -5 with Wilco. So I was, I'd only been in Chicago for a couple of months, and there's Wilco, and then the next year, starting early in 2022.
Well, in the -5 too. I mean, that's Peter Buck as well, right? From from REM.
He was in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
The core of it was Wilco with Scott McCoy, and then Buck came in a few times to do overdubs.
I see.
And my buddy Michael Jorgensen was engineering that. And so when Wilco was getting ready to do their next record, which was called A Ghost Is Born, they started it at Soma. They finished it at Sear Sound in New York, but they started it at Soma. And so that was a really big ongoing session fairly soon after I started working there. And I was often the assistant engineer on that. So Michael would be recording, I would be in there, helping. And at some point he moved up, he got called up to the majors and joined the band. But so that was when I was first starting there, that was some of the biggest, both in terms of like the reputation of the band and also the number of dates. Like they just booked a lot of dates there. So that was a lot of my first year was doing that kind of stuff.
That's incredible. And then I don't want to bury it to the end, but you've, in the spirit of hyphenating and the hyphenate, we have a snapshot of kind of where you're starting, in engineering, producing, playing in bands in Chicago. Let's jump to the end. Then we're going to fill, and then we'll work back to the middle somehow, to the gluey middle of it all. But what are you doing now? Where is life taking you?
Yeah. Now I live in Durham, North Carolina, and I've been here for 8 years, which is kind of surprising to me, although the pandemic happened in there, so it feels shorter.
Yeah.
Some lost years in there.
The void. But, we all got blipped. Yeah.
So the long story short version is I had been working for many years as a touring audio engineer, and the last several of those was like really hard road dog, just always on the road, always touring. And the polite version is that I got burnt out. The romance had left for me. And at that point, when it's not a fun job anymore, it kind of sucks as a job. And so I wanted to do something else. And just through self-preservation and trial and error, I had figured out how to manage that kind of an income where you go on tour and you get a bunch of money all at once, and then you come home and you don't have any money. So it's kind of like a boom or bust thing, and learning how to manage that, learning how to manage that without also making it my whole life. I figured out simple ways to do it. And I also, let's call it 5 to 7 years before I stopped touring, I'd also started investing and got kind of into that. And what I saw was a world, and especially the roadie world, because that's really who my contemporaries were. There were lots of people working hard, making good money, but just no resources for them in terms of like, what do you do? How do you make good decisions with your money? And because I was getting burned out on touring, I thought, well, maybe this is something I could do, is I could, learn how to be a financial advisor, and I can help these people who I know are making good money, but they don't have anyone to turn to.
Well, so there's a specific mindset to that type of audience that, I was laughing when you said, not making good decisions with money. I have a buddy who's a front of house engineer, and we were talking about money, and he had a big chunk, and I said, well, your car, you're probably gonna need a new car. You're gonna need, there's a few things you could put away for a rainy day. There's a few, and he's like, I'm gonna buy $16,000 worth of microphones. And I was like, yeah, or you could do that, because then I can rent. And then he gave me the whole story. I'm like, hey, do I hold the value? I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a type of investment too, but I don't know. It's a unique mindset. I think all of us are crazy from being on the road. Anybody that's doing it, even if you're making money or not making money, there's a certain kind of just wild hair sort of energy at any age when you're doing it. But I always think about it too, like from my years of touring, I was able to get on stage every night. There was a carrot at the end of the as hard as the day could be, of the flying, the driving, all this setup, the load in, everyone, in the van. But then at least I got on stage and I played my dumb songs for 45 minutes. And then, but everyone else who wasn't, performing on stage, they worked just as hard, if not harder. and they don't have, but you know what I mean? I was like, this is such a hard job. It's such, you know, I empathize because we were all doing it together for so long. And, you know, and obviously there was a chunk of change, and there was, you know, and they didn't pay for the hotels or the food and all the other stuff that, you know, was coming out of the artist side. And I was always happy to pay it because I saw how, you know, how hard it was on everybody. We're all doing it the same. But I've often thought, like, could I do that? Could I go now from being artist to then just working on the road or tour managing or doing things? And I just think I've seen the other side of it. If you take out the dumb jumping around on stage to, you know, it's just, oh man, that's hard. It's a hard one to do.
Yeah. I came to realize that I loved the challenge of it. And there was certainly, when I was starting, there was the cool factor of like, I'm with the band and I'm getting, you know, doors are getting opened for me that otherwise wouldn't get opened. But after you do it for a while, that part, the novelty of that kind of wears off.
The cheese plate and the warm beers don't do it for you anymore.
Yeah. When you're in your 20s, you can get excited about like, oh, they had really good sandwiches today. Yeah. But you know,
they put the peanut butter. It was on the radar. No one ever puts the peanut butter. They put the peanut butter. Okay, take it with us. Let's come in with us.
Yeah. But there are people who just love the work, and I would put it like this: like, there are people, I'm friends with people who love talking about PAs, and they'll talk about PA boxes and all day long about how great they are, how bad they are, whatever. And for me, it was always just like, this is the PA we have. Let's go. Let's get the best sound we can. And I never had that love of like, you know, really, really like, ooh, the low end in these boxes is so great. I was, you know, and so
did you have what was your go? Sorry, I keep interrupting here, but what was your go-to test song? Did you have one when you were gonna?
Oh, I had a few. Yeah. I started with this song by Hope and Lewis called "Take It Easy."
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that one?
I don't know.
It's a good one.
I'm thinking of the Eagles, but that's not that one.
No.
Take it easy. Yeah.
It's called "Take It Easy." Yeah. Hope and Lewis. And I like that one because I did it differently than other people. I think a lot of people try to find like, what's the most high fidelity song you could play, right? And I was coming at it like, what if I play some stuff that I know the limitations of it, but I can make that sound good? So Hope and Lewis, that song is like, there's not a lot of high end. It's honestly like, in terms of like a high fidelity recording, it's not that. But I was like, okay, this will tell me what I'm dealing with. And then I would play a song by Shannon Wright called "Everybody's Got Their Own Part in Their Own Play." And I love that song. And her vocal range in particular would help me figure out what's going on in like, you know, 1K to 2.5K. You know, so if the PA was really nasally, I would figure that out really quickly. And then I would often do a Pulp song, "Common People" by Pulp. I found like was a really good one, because then that gets really big. A lot of low
kind
end,
of the scooped mids in there.
Yep, exactly. Like lots of lows, lots of highs.
I guess it depends for the artist too, of what you're going to be putting through the system. You kind of want to make sure that whatever your artist is putting out, like if you have an electronic artist, you want to make sure all that low end is there versus maybe a rock band or something different.
Yeah,
acoustic.
Yeah, band. But. The way I approached it was like, start with the stuff that I know is limited first, and then work up to the really, really big stuff. Because if I can make the reggae song from, you know, the late 60s, early 70s sound good, then the high fidelity stuff is going to sound great.
Got it. It's so good. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things. It's fun to talk to different engineers of like sort of what works for their ears. It's sort of a thing for people who don't know. When you're a touring artist, every PA is different, even though the band is the same. It's the audio engineer's job to make sure whatever band they're putting on the stage sounds as best as it can through the PA board and, you know, the amplifiers and the speakers coming out and the room. I mean, you could literally have this. You could bring your own PA, and every room is going to be different. So there's a challenge as much as you try to, you know, make an even playing field. It's the nature of touring is it's a whack-a-mole kind of game. Every night you're trying to just get to sound the best that it can. And that's a relative term, best meaning for the situation. Yeah.
Best for that day at that time.
Yeah.
And then I would also kind of pepper in as a private joke to the crew. Like if it was a particularly tough day for whatever reason, I would end my PA check with Margaritaville, which was just kind of a sign like, okay, like let's take it easy today because this is going to be hard enough, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, nobody get too excited over here. Just keep it mellow. Got it. That's a great idea. That's a good way. We had a secret code word because our band, me in particular, I loved having a loud stage volume. And so that was just part of the gig. And obviously I've matured past that to some degree. However, I still enjoyed it. But in my youth, I was very excited about the stage volume. And I'm not the only one. I'm sure that's 90% of guitar players. But our front of house guy would say like, oh yeah, if they were giving him a hard time, like keeping things low, then he would give like a secret word over the talkback mic just to let me know, like, okay, here's what we're playing it low for sound check, and then at showtime we'll come up a degree. So it allowed us to kind of get a version of a sound check done but that allowed me to kind of go, oh yeah, okay, I'm keeping it at 2, and then we're gonna rip at 7 or whatever, for showtime. Didn't always work great, but it was it allowed us. It was a way to do it. It was a functional dysfunction of that scenario.
Yeah.
I don't know. Cool. Okay. So on the road, monies comes in, boom and bust. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. So, and then when you say investing, I mean, there's a part of it too. I mean, just from my limited experiences, like there's day trading. There's like going on and you're watching and you're buying in the morning and selling that afternoon. Are we done that kind of investing, or more long-term investing, or what sort of investing were you looking at?
Long-term investing. And the thing that clicked with me is that it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. When I first started investing, I was like, okay, you really, really have to learn a lot. And then I remember I was in Denver, Colorado. I looked up, how do you start investing? And the article I read was like, open an IRA. I was like, all right, I'll open an IRA. It was like, buy an index fund. I was like, okay, I'll buy an index fund. And it was literally that easy. I was like, oh, this isn't hard at all. And the thing for me about day trading is, number one, it's really hard to do it well. And almost everyone overestimates how good they will be or are at day trading. Like almost everyone, every time. But it's also like another job. And I don't want, the thing of investing is like your money's working, but you are not working, right? If you want a job, you work and you get paid. But if you're going to invest, I feel like it should be in a situation where you are not working, but your investment is working for you. And day trading to me feels like a lot of work compared to long-term investing. And, and again, I want to harp on this, that there's no evidence that anyone is any good at all at day trading. So the people do have success at it, but people also have success at things that are otherwise impossible to attain. Sure. Somebody gets to be Michael Jordan and everyone else is not, so some people are good at it, but most people are not.
Yeah. Well, in Las Vegas, they have to have that one of those slot machines go off or else nobody will ever do it. But that's one out of whatever, however, whatever the odds are. But it's not in your favor. However, one person will do it. It's not saying nobody ever wins in Vegas. Somebody does, but not you. Not today and not tomorrow.
It's hard to be that person who wins consistently.
Yeah.
Whether that's
you can't make it
trading,
a job. Yeah.
But if you get into investing and if you can stick with it for a couple of years, if you're doing like long-term buy and hold investing, it's actually really, really easy because you don't have to do any additional work. And then you wait 3 or 5 years and you're like, oh shit, like that turned into something. Like that's actually cool. So that was my experience with it. And when I was looking for what would my next step be, I originally thought I would kind of create a job that doesn't, as far as I can tell, doesn't exist, where I would be like a go-between. When a band was planning a tour, I would be the go-between for the band and the management and the booking agent, because my experience being on tour and in the later part of my career, I was also tour managing. My experience was by the time it was handed to me, all of these decisions had already been made that determined whether the tour was going to make any money or not. And so like people would say, can you put together a budget? I'm like, well, your budget's there. Like you've already agreed to all of these shows, and like, you know, we're going to be in San Francisco and then 2 days later we're going to be in Cincinnati. Like that's expensive. Like, you know, you don't need me to tell you that. You already agreed to it. So I thought I would spin up this job where I would be there as the sort of technical production person to be like, okay,
pre-production. Let's do this. Let's be smart when the planning and the booking and the routing and
exactly. And it's like, if you want this kind
to do it.
Yeah. If you want this kind of lights and this kind of backdrop, like you need to be in venues like this. And that means like, you can't play the rock club that you want to play because your lighting rig won't fit in there or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it turns out nobody wants to hire that person. And I suspect that it's because the people making those decisions are all getting percentages and they don't want somebody in there messing that up for them. But
the infrastructure of middle management or middlemen between, they have their own profit center that comes from doing things a certain way, and the band's profit isn't necessarily related to everyone else's profit. Right. Which is a polite way of saying not that they're stealing money from the band, but looking out for the band is not always in their interest. You would think that it's pitched as, I take a percentage of what you make. So you make $100, I make $20. And while that could be the case, you know, that there's a lot of ways to pull that together and package that and turn that into something that somehow the band, instead of getting $80, now has $20 to split between the 5 of them because everything else went towards hotels, you know.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Backline, drivers, gas. Yeah. When they could have done that in a way that maybe they didn't need to do it quite so expensively. However, but if no one's looking out for them, what you kind of would think that it's almost on a management side, but there again, it's the same sort of idea, right? Of like their job is to push the product out on the road and hit a number that works for them every month to come in, versus whatever the band's doing out there is none of their business. Yeah.
I think there are lots of great managers, and I've worked with lots of great managers, but I also think there's a tendency to not want to be the bearer of bad news when you're the band manager. And so if you know that the band is going over budget, who wants to be the one and go, you know, to tell the lead singer, like, I'm sorry, you don't get that wardrobe case because, you know, we don't have space, right? Nobody wants to be that person. And so then all the decisions get made. And by the time the tour is actually up and running, it's too late. And, you know, you could sell out lots of shows, like you could make money that way, but otherwise the expenses are already there and it's kind of too late to turn it around. Mm-hmm. That's what's my experience anyway.
It's interesting. You say, I mean, one of our first experiences too, I remember, was we were opening for a band and they had a tour manager, and we were just, you know, whatever, $100 a day opener. But we were talking to the headlining band's tour manager, and because we're kind of going like, oh, well, where are you guys staying tonight? Or what's the, you know, we're trying to figure out we're following this band, but we don't have the budget they have. And the guy just straight up told us like, oh yeah, my thing is I like say that I book them in these La Quintas or whatever. And I say they're like $700 when really they're only $300, and I pocket the money. And we're like,
whoa.
Oh, that's fucked up. But he's like, well, no, I do it like in a bulk thing. Like I say, the budget's going to be like $10,000. And then I only spend like $7,000 of that money for the hotels. And then I make, and I'm like, yeah, it's still fucked up. And so instantly our punk kind of brain was just like, okay, check one, never have a tour manager, never hire somebody to do this. Like we could figure out how much a hotel room costs, you know, just learning them. And again, not everybody's like that. I've met a lot of great TMs and a lot of great people who are worth their weight in gold and go above and beyond to do everything they can and are not stealing money. But there was an early experience of just kind of being like, oh, right, there's sharks fucking everywhere. Yeah. It's a whole fucking, you can't go swimming in the ocean and complain about the sharks. Like that's what we're at here now. You know, we've gone from playing house shows and basements, you know, to now we're in venues, and as nice as those venues can be or as bad as they can be, the everybody's out there just putting money in their pocket.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's like not constant in the music business, but there are so many opportunities for people to be taken advantage of at every stage, and to think that people who are your friends are, not really your
Well,
friends, that sort of stuff.
and a lot of the musicians and the artists are kids, and they're
Yeah.
friends, and they're doing this thing, they're living their dream. And like you
Right.
said, and then the money isn't always the part, you know what I mean? You're not always looking at the money. And when there is money, if you're not paying attention, somebody will hold on to it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody will hold on. That's for sure.
Like, oh, you wanted that money? I was just holding it for you. Like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, it's not here now, but thanks anyway. Bye.
But
it's interesting. Okay, so long-term trading and advising. So you're thinking kind of coming in and make sense of the tour road. But then where do you go from there? What happens next?
Yeah, well, so in 2019 I did a couple of tours. I didn't do very much, but I did enough to keep the lights on and whatever. And during that year, I passed the exam so I could be licensed to sell investment advice, to earn compensation for investment advice. I got that license and officially, opened up shop in September of 2019. And I don't know if you had this experience. I had this experience a lot where, what a time. Lots of people were like, all right, 2020 is going to be my biggest year yet. Like, I can't wait to talk to you next year. And I was like, hot damn, like all these roadies, they're
nothing bad ever happens to me.
They're all going to be calling me. Yeah. So 6 months in, the pandemic happened. And that was, I can just say that my business plan did not account for basically not being able to work. Yeah. Like my entire audience just could not work for a year and a half. And so those were difficult years. 2020 and 21 were difficult for me. But since then, I kept at it. And I was talking to someone else a few weeks ago, maybe months ago, and she was like, did you have another job when you started your business? And honestly, I couldn't, because the only other thing I knew how to do, which was work with bands, like nobody at that point, I hadn't done any studio work in many years. So I didn't really feel like, okay, I'll just do sessions with people. But yeah, like nobody was on tour. So I didn't, not only did I not have a plan B, but then when the whole world fell apart, like what would have been my plan B was not viable either. Yeah. But I persevered and I'm still at it. And every year my business grows and I feel good about that.
And you're an independent financial advisor. You're not working at Wells Fargo advising them or Morgan Stanley or whatever it is out there. Okay. That's cool.
Yep, you're correct.
Because I feel like everyone I know, I have a cousin who does it, but he's in-house at a financial institution. And I've talked to people, you talk to people, but the normal way people come to a financial advisor is through their brick and mortar bank or some kind of, bigger name. So how challenging is that, being independent to this? I would imagine
it's really fucking challenging. Yeah. It's very challenging. It's also, for me, it's super essential, because after so many years of not having conventional jobs, frankly, I couldn't stomach the idea of being like an entry-level person at a Fidelity or a Edward Jones or whatever. Like, even though I was starting over from scratch, I did not want to be at the bottom of the totem pole. And then also, based on my experience, like you said, a lot of people, the first time they talk to a financial advisor is through their bank. I had that experience. And what I learned right away is I'm not saying everybody is this way, but what I learned right away is those people don't give a shit about you unless you got a couple $100,000. Like if you're walking in with whatever, at that point I don't mind talking about this. At that point I had about $50,000. And to me, that was like a lot of money. That was the most money I'd ever had ever. And I felt great about it. And he was basically, in so many words, was like, I can't do anything for you. Like, this is not worth my time.
Yeah. And slow down, Monopoly man. Yeah.
Right. And so I didn't want to be in a situation where I was talking to the people that I wanted to work with, but I was like, sorry, start saving and investing, but come back in 5 years when you actually have something. Like, I wanted to be there because like I said, a lot of the people that I imagined that I would be working with, I knew how much they were making. Like, I don't know if this is common knowledge, but a lot of roadies can make 6 figures a year. And that's not like an entry level, you got to have a lot of experience. But like, if you're a roadie and you're making 100, 150K, like, even if you're starting from zero, like, you have the potential to save a lot of money and to invest a lot of money. And so I wanted to be able to meet people who were literally like had never done it before, but just wanted to. And you can't do that if you're at a more traditional institution, because they're really chasing people who already have assets.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Versus kind of being with them on the growth journey and sort of
exactly.
Yeah. And so I would imagine, I mean, do you have sort of tiers or levels, or how does that, I mean, cause my brain now I'm just going into branding mode. Like, ooh, okay, there's the introductory thing. There's the, hey, we talk there, or you can subscribe to my Patreon and you get this amount of information or this or that. And how have you sort of, what has your approach been for service?
The way that I have tiers, I wouldn't necessarily call it tiers, but I would say that there's different sides of my business. One side is investment management, and that's just what it is. I'm managing people's investments for them, and I get paid based on how much I'm managing. And so that is on a system where the more that I'm managing, the lower my fee. So my fee still goes up, but the percentage of the total goes down. Then the other side of my business is delivering financial advice or financial planning. And I am a certified financial planner. I studied for that and I got that designation. And so that's for people who are more like, I have one or more questions or problems or concerns that I need to address. And sometimes investing is one of those, but a lot of times it's just things like, how do I know what money to go in what account? Or how do I know how much I should be putting towards debt versus how much I should be putting to whatever? And so that side of the business is more of an open book in terms of the stuff that we're talking about and the help I can provide. And I have two different tiers there, where I have a smaller service, which I call a financial coaching session, which is basically we get together for an hour, we talk about whatever you want to talk about. And at the end, you should know these are the things I should be doing or thinking about going forward. Right. And so that's for people who just really, they're pretty comfortable, but they just want a little bit of a check-in. And then I do what I call one-time financial plan, which is more of like a 3-month engagement. It costs a little bit more money, it takes a little bit more time, but we're going to look at whatever your top 3 things are that you want to deal with. And at the end, you should have some idea of how to approach any one of those. And if I can help you do that, then I will help you do that. But so it's like, those are the sort of tiers, I guess you could say, where like one side is more like I'm talking to you and giving you advice, and the other side is investments.
Got it. And is this kind of considered like a financial manager, like a money manager? Like if a band gets a big deal and suddenly they go from TikTok to arenas, would you be somebody that would come in and say, oh, cool, I'm going to help manage the finances of this side? Or is that more of an accounting sort of thing? Where would you fit in that world?
There's some crossover. So I would say that's more of a business manager role. Right, yeah. But a lot of times, if a business manager is a good business manager, they'll say like, hey, I'm doing all of this for your business, but also you on your own need to think about this stuff. So, if somebody is a good business manager and they're keeping track of all of the budgets and the profits and whatever, they're not necessarily saying, nor are they licensed to say, hey, you should also invest your money. Right? Or they might say, hey, you should invest your money, but they can't really do it for you. And so this has happened to me a few times where a business manager will reach out and say, I have this client, they're making money, they need help. Can you help them? And so I'm not necessarily the person working for the band, but I'm the person that maybe the band or the band manager calls when they're like, what should we be doing with all of this extra money that we now have?
Yeah. Shoebox under the bed. You're saying that's not the best way to do it?
Mattresses made out of money.
Yeah, my wife, and again, not to divulge too much, but when my wife first moved in with me in our 1-bedroom apartment, she was like, what is this bed thing? And I'm like, well, half of it is shoes that I've gotten for free because they give bands shoes at this point in life. And the other and the other part of the shoe boxes are literally just filled with 20s and 5s. And she was like, you are insane. This makes no sense. Like, aren't you worried about it? I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know how this happened, but this is where I'm at. And then we seasoned some of the money, and then we purchased a home, and now there is no money. I've not made any money.
No, there's no money.
That's happened. But again, that'll always be our lifelong thing. If she's just like, you have skate shoes and cash. That was all you had when I married you. I was like, that's true. Now I have
Sounds
children.
About right.
Yeah, I have children. I have a car that runs, and that's it. And I still have my skate shoes, but no cash.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious. So it'd be more, you would work for the individual band members, because even that's a thing too. Like within a band, the songwriter is getting a publishing royalty that's different than the bass player, who's getting, whatever royalties he's getting. And I would imagine you having a background in music and sort of how that works, you have a better understanding of what's coming in and sort of what the mentality is. And sort of it's probably one of the higher risk, employment opportunities, where again, there's a chance you could make money, and then that there's a even greater chance, if you did make any money, that money will stop coming in very, very soon. Where with it, you know what I mean? There's a boom bust is a great way of putting it, but it's hard, and it's harder every year. I feel like, for bands, I talk to young bands sometimes, and I just don't, I don't have any advice. The world that I, musically, or my career was birthed in an environment that doesn't exist today. We still sold CDs. You got nominated for a Grammy on a CD package. I don't think that's I don't think that exists anymore. It's like saying, the candy bars were a nickel, I don't know. It's just so different, with streaming and everything else. I mean, is there, and again, not to ask for any free advice, but in general, speaking to a lot of people who play music and listen to this, with streaming, or with kind of the volatile sort of nature of live music and streaming music and recorded music, is there a general sort of like theory, or sort of what is a good way to start for somebody who's doing that, and looking for that million TikTok view song, the TikTok trends that are hoping to happen? What is a proper sort of just financial outlook for someone starting out? Obviously, no one's doing this because of money. We're all doing it because we love to do it, but money does exist. So is there a general sort of rule of thumb you use to new musicians as they start out in that world to think about?
Yeah. I would say for somebody starting out, to really prioritize saving cash as much as you can.
I knew it. Shoeboxes. Yes. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Shoeboxes or savings accounts. And everybody in any job should have a savings account that could ideally last them several months. Like if someone loses a job, you get injured, you can't work, like having money in the bank is good for everyone. But if you're a musician, or if you have any kind of up and down income, that's so much more important. And until you get to the point where you're secure in that, and different people can think about that different ways, but like a good rule of thumb is like, could you cover 6 months worth of expenses in cash if you had to? And I know that's a lot of cash for people, but it's like, if you can do that, everything else after that becomes much, much easier and more bulletproof, I guess, if you can save up a bunch of cash. So I would start there. And then my observation, being a mid 40s person thinking about the music industry now, is I think you just have to diversify so much more than you used to. You can't just be a band and make music and say like, okay, I hope this makes money. Like, you also have to be on TikTok. You also have to be, you just have to be relentless about all the different outlets. And the people that I see, that I work with, who are doing well in this environment, seem to have the energy or have the understanding of how to be present on all of those different outlets in a way that to me is just like way too much, like
Sure.
I would not be able to maintain it is what I mean. I'm not faulting anybody for being very active. I'm saying like, I don't want to be on
the level of daily exposure that you need through social media is almost abhorrent to people of our generation, whether it's on purpose or just happens to be that way. But your availability and your just exposure is just constant. Yeah, I can see that.
Do you know, are you a sports fan at all?
Not particularly, not contemporary sports, I guess. Yeah. I'll watch an old game.
I'm a basketball fan. And I think there's an analogy there where like, going back to whatever, let's say Michael Jordan, he had the deal with Nikes. Well, Jordan maybe is a bad example because he had so many endorsements, but let's say before that, it was like you're a basketball player and you could be the best basketball player. And that was primarily how you made your money and what you were good at. And now everyone coming into the NBA has like multiple business ideas. They're thinking so much broader and wider. And I think, unfortunately, I think if I were a young musician now, I would be thinking about that. Like, how can I make my music, but how can I also do these 4 other things that you just maybe didn't have to do 20 or 30 years ago?
Yeah, no, I think Magic Johnson was kind of one of the first visible sort of investors post his career, where it was, he invested in particular parts of Los Angeles, and it was Magic Johnson's TGIF. It was Magic Johnson's, movie theater. He would put his name right on it. And he'd almost work out licensing deals with some of these franchisees where he could, anyway, that was a smart, interesting way. But I love Shaq's money management and his like public persona about how he talks about his businesses and everything he does. And I'm not even a fan of what he does, but just I love how he talks about it. I've been serviced all these stories and, social media sort of sound bites of how he sort of looks at his portfolio. I mean, and I've reached the age now too, where it's like, wait, laundromats. Why don't I own a laundromat? I feel like this is this has been pushed through social media. Like, this is the most genius thing in the world. I need laundromats and I need 40,000 like Coke machines, like vending machines. Yeah. Seems to be the thing that everyone says I should be doing, and I'm not doing that. But then real estate is the other side of things, which again just seems less and less plausible. I have so many more questions, and I think it's fascinating. I know we barely scratched the surface on a lot of this stuff, but our hour's almost up. Where can people follow you and find out more? And if somebody happens to, need to talk to you more or could benefit from talking to you more, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah. And if you have the time, I can run over also.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I have a band coming in. I have a mix session coming up.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So people can find me. My website is iselerfinancial.com. Iseler is spelled Iseler. And through that, if you want to reach out, you can do so. There's my email address is on there. There's a form if you want to contact me. I also have my own podcast that I started this year called The Thing We Never Talk About. And it's specifically for people with weird jobs. So because of my background, I'm talking to a lot of music industry people, but it's also just, anybody who has an up and down income or has a job where they feel like I'm not part of the mainstream. That's the focus of that podcast. So they could check that out as well.
I love it. That's great. And then what else? Social media? Do people follow you? Do you post funny TikTok?
Yeah. I mean, I have an Instagram account. I have an Instagram account, Iseler Financial. And then I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I am not super active on those. I don't really enjoy it anymore. It's an artifact of the time we live in. I just don't really enjoy being on social media anymore. So I do have those. You
need to hire a 15-year-old that can cut you into like whatever the popular trend is. And then you're there with financial advice.
17-second clips or whatever.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Vibe checks. It's coming with the vibe. Yeah. Like, hey, yeah. Then you can take the Iseler Financial Challenge. That is. Like, I was encouraging this thing, and we'll wrap up with this. Tell me what you think of this financial strategy. This was especially when I first launched the podcast. It was because we're coming out of pandemic. I'm about to start my 3rd year, so this is about 2023, 2022, somewhere in there. I had this idea that if you had money, if you had a job and you could work from home and whatever was your life was working for you, because life was not working for a lot of people that I knew and in my particular part of the world and, music and creative arts. I just said, if you have a job and you see anybody with a guitar, with an instrument case, whether they're busking or not, even if they're just moving it, if they're just holding it, somebody that's holding an instrument or a canvas or a paintbrush, or whatever it is, reach into your pocket and just give them $20. Just give money. If you have the money to spare, if instead of buying, an extra beer at the bar tonight, like just give somebody $20. If you see anybody out there just who's creative, just go out here. And it's just the only thing I could think of was like, everybody's hurting so bad. And if somebody owns a guitar, they need $20 right now. They're hurting. Yeah. So that was as close as I could come. No one's ever written me and told me that that's happened to them, but I was trying to plant that seed in the world of just like, hey, just benefit these people.
I think if you have the money, I think that's an amazing thing to do. I heard this story last year. A well-known Chicago figure, Steve Albini, died last year very unexpectedly.
Yeah. Right,
and I heard this story following that I never knew this about Steve. I knew him a little bit because we were both in the studio world, and I filled in a couple of times at Electrical in their tech shop. But I wouldn't have said that Steve and I were friends. But so I didn't know this story about him, but he would do that every day. He would fill up his wallet with cash, and every time he passed someone who needed money, he would pull $20 out, and just every day, just empty his wallet everywhere he went. And that, to me, I made a very aspirational goal for myself that I would like to be in a situation where I can do that. And every day fill up, get $200 worth of 20s, and every person I pass who needs it, just be able to do that until it runs out. And I think in terms of like aspiring for a level of wealth or influence, like that is a pretty good goal, I think.
Yeah, well, that's incredible. And it's not like he made videos about it. He wasn't Mr. Beast.
No.
He wasn't filming himself giving people $20 and looking looking for the social media clout of it. It's incredible. And I would hope that happens more often than we know. And it should be secret. It doesn't have to be, a public thing or done for any reason. It's the gift is its own, giving is its own gift. But yeah, for somebody like that, I'm sure he was okay in the world. He had enough to eat. He could comfortably buy groceries and still give out money, which is great.
Yeah.
He's really somebody, he's inspiring on so many levels, from his engineering ability to, his sort of outlook on the world. I mean, there's some stuff I think as in his younger days are probably, it's harder to rationalize, put in context of the time, but in general, seemed like a pretty stand-up, straightforward guy.
Sure. I think anybody who's interested in that should look at some of the interviews he did in the last few years, because he really came around in the way that you would want him to come, or somebody like that to come around on those early decisions that he made in his creative life, of saying like, at the time I thought I was right. Now I can see I was not right. And, just really owning it. It was great.
And I think, that's so much just a part of being an outspoken creative individual is, times change, and, you don't want to live by censoring yourself at all times, but also being able to own up to it all. It doesn't surprise me that Steve could do that. Wow. All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much for coming on. I'm looking forward to hearing more of your podcast. Tell me again, it's Iseler Financial Advice?
Iseler Financial is
the thing we don't talk about.
The thing we never talk about is the podcast, and IselerFinancial.com is my website.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Brad, Tim, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And also thank you for having me on The Thing We Never Talk About. Everybody go find his podcast and make sure to subscribe to it, and you will hear my episode where I talk very naively about money and I ask dumb questions to someone who knows what they're talking about. And maybe I learn a thing or two also along the way. It's the friends you make along the way. See, that's why I don't have any money, because I say dumb things like that instead of saying, put your money into T-bills. Gold is where it's at. I have no idea. I'm definitely not a financial advisor. I could be a musical advisor. I could be an engineering advisor, recording advisor. I could advise people which chord sounds good after which chord or which guitar amp is the loudest. But that's about it. That's the depth of my my specialty, my personal investment into knowledge ends somewhere around there. All right, everybody go check out IslerFinancial.com and The Thing We Never Talk About, Tim's podcast. And there's links to those in the show notes down below. Have a good weekend. Be safe. And remember, blackout. Don't buy anything from November 25th to December 2nd. Send a message. Vote with your money. With all the other voting and everything else we're doing, make sure you spend your money this holiday season wisely with, non-evil AI, fascist enterprises as much as possible. I know it's not always easy. It's not always convenient, and I'm not perfect. I'm not one to throw stones in this glass house, but do what you can. Support mom and pops, support small businesses, support independent artists when possible and when you can. Come on. It's like charity and a good thing and social responsibility, and it's all rolled into one. And you also get good products made by good people, where you can. And for all the other dumb stuff, just do the best you can. That's all we're trying to do. Don't beat yourself up about it. But spend your money where it can do some good. All right. Be well. See you next week.
There were lots of people working hard, making good money, but just no resources for them in terms of like, what do you do? How do you make good decisions with your money? And because I was getting burned out on touring, I thought, well, maybe this is something I could do, is I could, learn how to be a financial advisor, and I can help these people who I know are making good money, but they don't have anyone to turn to.